Music matters. Mr. Ryan Richter.
How's it going?
Doing good, man. Nice to meet you officially. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. I'm flattered, truly.
Yes, sir. No, of course. Yeah, this is one I've wanted to do for a while now. Been a fan of your stuff and your work for a minute. I think I originally found your stuff, I believe through Tyler Nuffer, because Jake is a close friend of mine, his brother.
Great.
Yeah, so I think through that chain is how I originally became familiarized with your stuff, and then became a fan quickly about just like everything. Oh wow, it just fell on you. That was the omen, dude. Yeah. What is that?
What does it say?
Oh, it's a set list.
It tells us. It's a picture of an alligator or a crocodile.
There you go.
The first word or the first sentence is sitting on a log. It has to be a set list.
Yeah, it's a set list for sure.
Crazy. Maybe it's Year of the Gator that I don't know.
But yeah, I became a fan of your stuff after that, and then I remember seeing you at Zebulon, and then yeah, I've been a fan ever since. But yeah, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it, man.
I'm so flattered and yeah, I think it's cool.
Of course,
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. First thing I kind of wanted to bring up and touch on you with is something I've been kicking around in my brain for a while now, just about your music, but also just about like a larger musical trend. To me, it seemed like different Americana genres, be it folk or country or whatever, feels like they're in a really, really cool spot right now. Like it feels like there's more of that music coming out right now on both like an underground level and a mainstream level than there definitely has been ever in my lifetime, at least. So it's been cool to watch that progression kind of happen, and like there be a world where, you know, we have like people like Lizzie and people like Noah Kahan and just like big folk giants like that coexisting with names like, you know, like Dwight Elsie or Slim Dan or Truman Sinclair, some of these smaller artists, and it just feels like there's a really cool like level to all of it. And now, not to say that a lot of the music you work on is even like super in the folk lane, but it all seems to have some kind of like, you know, acoustic driven singer-songwriter ism to it, which is something I've always found very interesting, and that genre of music seems to be having a huge moment right now. But I was curious, how have you kind of seen that genre progress throughout your career? Do you feel like right now it's more, it's at more of like a turning point than it has been in the past, or do you feel like it's been an upward trajectory? How do you kind of like see like the current state of a lot of the music you're working on a genre level?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
One that I may have to, it'll probably take me a while to answer, but I can say that I think that, you know, obviously things go in cycles. Yeah. And there are seasons of certain kinds of music having a stronger foothold. I think for the past decade, or we'll say 8 years, I think the big majority share of the music industry has been like the stuff that's gotten widely saturated has been there's we can push back on this, but like hip hop is huge, has been huge forever. Yeah. For a long time. I mean, it's been the dominant genre, I would say, like metrically speaking. 8-10
plus years. Yeah. I mean, I would say since like 2016. Yeah. To, I mean, I guess if you were to put a timeline on it, like I would say 2016 to like 22.
Yeah. I mean, it feels right to me. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and there's a lot of reasons I think that's really cool. Some of the reasons I think for that, and I think again it's a cool thing as an artist, if I were in that lane, or as a person that was producing that music or producing events that revolved around it, is there tends to be you know, it's like you don't have to really worry about the band dynamic if you're an artist and you have your producer or your team even, like that's a way more elegant way to move. Yeah. There's a way smaller footprint there, and there's more, frankly, there's a possibility that there's more money to be made.
Oh, for sure.
On all sides of that. Yeah. But now I think, using Lizzie as an example, and I guess Dijon too, I don't think that they're the same, but I do know that the response that people have gotten from the tours that we've done is that people really seems like are craving an untethered, unclocked, none of the stuff that we've done has been on a click. Yeah. It's completely feel oriented. That's how we made Lizzie's record. That's how,
I mean, that makes sense.
Certainly the Dijon stuff is like the most free honestly, it's like the most free music I've seen on a major stage, and certainly been a part of. But I think people really, I think the cycle that we're in now is people want more humanity in the music that they listen to. And I feel like the way that people are producing music now too is it, like, you know, maybe it's an aesthetic thing, but I do feel like there's a lesser, what's the word? A lesser dedication to the grit. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it's an appropriate time for it to happen, because we are, you know, anyone that is like remotely awake watches the news of the past couple of weeks.
I'm just going to say this, yeah.
And it's becoming clear that we're like effectively living in an age of like full-on technocracy.
Yeah, 100%.
And the thing that I was talking to a friend about just this morning was like the news. I saw news yesterday that the this is insane, but like the entirety of the CIA was offered a buyout.
And the Department of Education.
Yeah. And so like what's...
Because we don't need those, right? We don't need like education or security or like... those are extras.
But of course, like what's the only thing that could possibly be on the other end of that offer is, hey, like take an early retirement and just trust us that this AI thing that we're going to roll out is going to keep an eye on you or teach your kids or whatever it is, watch the traffic lights, who knows. But I think it's nice energetically that there could be that sort of like crossover swing of, I mean, at least in my life, like I really do feel like the thing that is giving people a lot of value and a lot of excitement in their concert going and music listening realities is humanity.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's definitely prevalent, I think, on some of the lyrics on the back, the latter half of the single that you've released. I think that's really prevalent, but even just on like a more general music scale. I think if you even think about the history of things like folk music, and again, like I'm broadly labeling it as folk music, but like I wouldn't really call like Dijon or Lizzie or most of the artists you work with, they're not really in a traditional folk lane. They're in like an acoustic driven often, but singer-songwriter lane, if you will. But I think the common thread amongst a lot of those people is a really raw sense of lyricism, a lot of storytelling, and there's grit to all of it as well.
I agree.
Pointing at Lizzie, for example, that was interesting that you said a lot of it's improvisational. That makes sense because a lot of it is definitely jazz driven. I think she went to Berkeley, right? She's like a very good like jazz singer, and like there's all these elements that feel like they kind of go back to a time, not only in the world of jazz, but also in the world of folk. And so much of that genre's roots come from revolution music. It comes from protest music. That's like so much of what folk music comes from. So it's been interesting to kind of watch this like singer-songwriter, like heavy era, I suppose, where like they've almost adopted some of like the mannerisms necessarily of like older folk music, even if it's often not as on the nose politically, it still kind of shares some of the sentiment, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, like it's funny you mentioned like the political nature of, or the political potential for music. In my opinion, I mean, even though like it may be something of like a bubbling undertone or undercurrent, I'm ready for like, I mean, we are due for like a proper protest record. Yeah. And I don't know.
I agree.
Like I want like, I don't know. It's like hard to even know where to start because there's so much to try to dig in against, but
that is an interesting thing. Like I do feel like in terms of like things that are really like charting, right? The vast majority of it is entirely apolitical, which is so interesting because we're in such a politicized time. But I've honestly never thought about that. But it doesn't even seem like it's, at least lyrically, right? It's not like directly translating to the music that's getting a lot of plays.
No, and I would think too that like there's such like a like I was talking to another buddy last night about this fucking Kendrick bullshit and like how the fact that song can be played at a Laker game, it can be played at like a high school football game,
Super Bowl,
the Super Bowl, at the Grammys, and it's like it's this original. Like I mean, I don't care about Drake, but to hear him complain about it as this, he believes that there's like effectively like a streaming conspiracy being built against him. And to see it exist in this way at this magnitude, one would almost have to agree. And the reason I bring that up, I mean, I think that's a silly thing to think about, but the reason I bring it up is because I think that if someone was really, really just like, if some huge artist was ready to lay it all on the line and say, like, this is my protest record, and this is like my line in the sand, and this is how I feel about these real earthly and societal issues. Like, I'm not totally sure, because of the techno overlord nature of the way that we live our lives now, I'm not totally sure that it would be allowed enough oxygen to really burn as brightly as they maybe had done in prior generations.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating point. And I guess I would ask you, like, why, and do you think that is the reason why we haven't gotten like a real massive protest record in a long time? Because to be honest with you, the last time that I can really point to like a political piece of music achieving like insane critical success, right, is Kendrick, is T-Pab. I can't really think of a record or after that achieved anywhere close to that level of commercial success that was so political.
Well, we are definitely of different generations age-wise, but like there was a band that really blew my mind. It was in a way, it was the first time I ever thought, and this might be funny because this is probably just so obvious for so many people, but like the fact that Rage Against the Machine was basically like their whole thing was anti-establishment. And I get it. Like, I know that punk was that. I know all of that, but when it hit me, guys, I grew up in a like fucking like Camelot level beach town in San Diego. Like, we were not a politically active situation. But when that came on the scene, like, I really was like, oh damn, like you can do it. And then I also got to see some of those shows, and it like really blew my mind. It struck a chord, not only because the music was so cool, and I think a lot of people hadn't heard anything like that, at least wide scale, but I mean, the message certainly resonated with people enough. Like, I think to see footage of Rage Against the Machine shows from their like epic era,
it's insane.
And it's like, what are people reacting to? Are they reacting to the music? Or are they reacting to the message behind it?
I mean,
like just to shore up my like non-street like my history. Obviously these things were happening before and after, but I think for some reason, and I'm sure there's lots of reasons why, but this thing was allowed to go through right down the middle on MTV. And it was like, to me, it just felt like the first one where I was like, oh shit, like this can be a thing.
The center of culture. Like, quite literally the epicenter of culture at the time, MTV. Massive on that show. Absolutely massive. What always because I'm a massive Rage fan, and what always is insane to me about those old videos, them performing like really, really like right when they were taking off, like after their self-titled record really like, hit everything, is the straight vitriol on like Zach De La Rocha's face. Like, there was no part of it that was performative. Zero part of it. He is like, it's very obvious just how real and how honest and how raw those records are, and how like there's no bit of performatism in there. I mean, and certainly, at the time, I believe, I mean, it's been a while since I've like thought about him or what he's up to. I would wonder, if the fire still burns as bright. Like, I'm sure it does. And I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying like, yes, at the time when that was happening, there wasn't a single ounce of me that was looking at that in a critical way, thinking these dudes are faking this. Like, 100%. It seemed very much all in. 100%. And was, it was exciting. Do you think now social media not really like clinging to art sometimes that has that message? Like, why do you think that is? I know you were saying you think like the means of control can be a bit different. Is that kind of what you were alluding to? Like, sometimes the way to, and this sounds silly, but the way to get your record to go viral on TikTok sometimes is not to talk about class consciousness. You know? Do you think that has anything to do with it? 100%. Yeah. And I wish that I didn't have to say it with that much certainty, but I just think it is the case that, I mean, it just is what it is. And I think that like people that I know, while we communicate, have started to censor the spellings of words
when we're talking on certain platforms about
that's crazy.
Politically inclined topics, you know? And we're not doing anything crazy, but it's like it's a part of the kind of assumption, and it's kind of the buy-in of using these things now, where like, if you or I wanted to go really hard on some hot controversial hashtagging, like our metrics would be suppressed. And I think it's so insane that a guy like you or me would have to think about that, but like, I just think it's true. And I think, you know, a lot of people that are allowed, not allowed, that's a weird word, a lot of people that make it to the point where they're able to make a consistent and viable living in music. I think once you reach that point, like, it would be misinformed to think that you could really rock 100% unfiltered, you know? And I think that that's unfortunate. And again, like, anyone that knows, I mean, I know just enough to be annoying, right? But like, anyone that knows anything about like the way that
the music industry functions,
but also like the way that like people have monitored movers and shakers in culture, for, you know, specifically transgressive people in culture and society. Like, we've been, like, we being the ruling class of whatever the society is, we've been keeping track on those people and been trying to figure out ways to manage and manipulate that stuff. It just is what it is. It's not even strange. It's how government operates. It's how media operates. And so it would make sense to me that, like, if I was managing a young artist that was really starting to let it rip, and get some traction and some success and some huge, like, you know, festival guarantees, it unfortunately could be the case that, like, at some point, from a business perspective, you may have to have a conversation with them where it was like, hey, like, do you want to retire early, or do you want to, like, kind of go out there in the wind, you know? It's whack. I hate even talking about this, but I think it's real.
I agree with you, but it's strange because, like, at least from my perception, it doesn't seem like that used to be the case. Like, like Rage Against the Machine played Woodstock at a very pivotal point in their career. It didn't. And that was the biggest stage there was. MTV, they were all over. Like, it's like these protest bands were not viewed in the same light they are now. Like, I think, like, I'm trying to think, like, of the artists, like Parquet Courts, I guess, is an interesting example. Very political, but like, they're not a very big band, and like, there's not very, and they make pretty commercially sound music. There's not very many artists that I can point to and be like, they have a gigantic voice and they're like incredibly political. You know, there's almost more of it in the UK than America, now that I think about it. Which,
well, I mean, one of the great examples of this would be Roger Waters, who is 100%. Like, for decades now, been very, very much pro-Palestinian and critical of whatever it is, the Israel project in relation to the suffering and oppression of the Palestinian people. He's so huge that he can't be silenced. So people will go see. I mean, he still plays arenas. And it's like,
I saw him like 2 years ago in an arena.
And I know for a lot of people it's really challenging. Because, like, you know, if you have passionate beliefs on a side that's actively being criticized, and yet you still are a lifelong Pink Floyd fan. Like, you know, there's either a black and white, cut and dry break from that scene that you have to do as a fan, or you have to go allow yourself to be challenged. And I think
100%.
We are not very challenged anymore. Like, you or I right now could summon 10,000 calories to be delivered to this address on our phone, and it wouldn't take very much, you know.
That's a really funny way to put it. That's a great point. I think you're totally right. I mean, just to talk about, like, that example specifically, I went to a Pink Floyd show, or not Pink Floyd, sorry, a Roger Waters show with somebody who's not of my age, somebody who's older than me, a good bit older than me, and they were talking about how much of a problem they had with it being innately political. And I just realized how out of touch that sentiment is.
100%.
It's like you've never listened to Pink Floyd before. And it's like, this person, like, one of their favorite records ever is The Wall. And they're complaining about, like, Pink Floyd being political. Or like, they were saying, like, I don't know when it became popular for music to be inherently about politics. And I was just like, what What do you mean?
And what that signifies is that someone, I don't know how old this person was, but like they got into weed in their early lives. They bought a blacklight poster of The Wall, and they thought it sounded cool, and they completely missed what was actually going on.
Yeah.
And then when they actually had to like deal with it in a material way at a performance, it's challenging. And like that's the thing, though. It's like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see one of those shows, but I have friends in the band, and I really appreciate what they do. At the very least, just to have people have conversations like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's important. I think good music challenges you. I really do.
Yeah.
And not only from a sonic level, but also from like a conceptual level and a storytelling level. I think that's a very common theme among some of the most generational artists of like ever, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting talking about your record a bit. I was listening to a interview you did, and I wasn't aware of the fact that the lyrics at the end, they're Ryan Cooder, right? Or Ryan Cooder, right?
Yeah.
Ryan Cooder lyrics. I did not know that. I wasn't like familiar with a lot of his stuff till I listened to that interview, and I kind of looked it up, and a lot of those lyrics kind of paint an interesting light on all this stuff that's like not inherently political, but it kind of is more of like a worldview. It's like an overall worldview. Do you feel like your identity as like a person when you approach issues like this, or kind of like feelings of dread or existentialism in general, do you approach them from like a lens that is more like not drenched in politics and more so just regarding like the overall way it affects, I guess, your life?
Ooh, I think that things have gotten so miserable as far as the way that all the people that are in power now, for the most part, I'm sure there's some really great people that I'm unaware of, but it seems to be the case that it has become the cultural conditioning to be let down by them continually and unimpressed and sort of like they're all, like it would be very easy to say like these are a bunch of ghouls that like basically like succeeded to the point where now they're in positions of power. Because of that, I have sort of stopped thinking about life in terms of politics.
Yeah. Even
though, I mean, one has to, but I'm not so, I don't really, I used to be very committed to reading about it, potentially to a bad point.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend was just like, dude, we're not going to get there. This is not what we talk about. But I guess what I'm saying is like, I think that there are I guess my approach is that like, I basically want people, myself included, I mean, everyone can be reminded of this throughout their day, throughout their month, whatever. I just think that the goal, unfortunately, we can't expect very much from the people up top. And again, I'm not launching a campaign. I'm not going to do it. But like, I just think
for president.
I just think that we have to. The message for me of using those lyrics is like, it's a real thing that you should want to be decent, and that you should
100%,
and that you should expect some sort of commensurate and equal treatment to the things that you've done to receive that sort of experience on the other side, if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't know what it's like to run a federal administration. I don't know what it's like to run like a power company. I just don't get it. And so in that way, like I'm willing to extend anyone in the world a bit of runway to be like, yo, this is hard. Like, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is miserable work. And it probably is. But I think, there's a lyric there's a part of that passage, try to live, try to live in harmony with Mother Nature, take what you need, leave the rest alone. And I believe his lyric is really cool and weird. I think I read it as
Sands of Time lyric, right?
Well, so it's part of it, but it's try to live harmonic with old Mother Nature.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I'm so far from doing that. Like, that's the thing, is like this stain of participation in this fucking weird thing that we're all doing, where like this Spider-Man is made at a weird like, you know, he's going to be around forever.
Yeah.
He'll be around way longer than you and me.
You're right.
You know what I mean? And he's made of bizarre polymers and colors that I don't know how this went down.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that he's here, but like, I'm not preaching. I have no claim to any sort of like proactive or even meaningful environmentalism, but I am like, I really am more and more aware of it as I go, like this sort of like this feeling of just like all you got to do is just like try to be good, and that just try.
Yeah.
Like really, just try.
Yeah.
And like, don't buy a bunch of shit you don't need because it's satisfying in the moment. I do it sometimes. I buy gear. I love to buy gear. I get rid of it often.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, so I guess going back to the source of your question, how do I deal with like the misery of modern day contemporary politics? I kind of am thinking about it on karmic terms these days.
Interesting.
And and again, I only know enough about that concept to be annoying. I don't know if I said that correctly. I'm going to say it again. I only know enough about the concept to be annoying. To even invoke the word karma seems absurd. Like I just like this, like I don't know anything about those traditions.
There's levels to it. Yeah.
But like, I think it's real. Like, I think that some people, who operate up top, like, I don't know what they expect, but like, I would like to believe, and not because I want to see anyone suffer. I just think like, there can only be one other kind of experience 100%. On the other side of that manner of conducting yourself. So I guess how to exist in the year 2025, just try to be good.
Yeah.
That's really all I got.
Yeah. I think that's really well said. I think in terms of the karmic part that you were just talking about, I often don't even think it, like, I think there's multiple ways to look at it. There is one being the more, I suppose, like religious perspective. There's the more, I guess, Buddhist perspective, like the grander kind of idea of like a lot of these people and groups of people and religious practices that point to things like karma, right? There's that way to look at it. And then I also think there's just a literal, like logical, not to say the other one is illogical, but I think there's also just a very literal like belief in karma being the fact that you just simply get in what you or get out what you put in. That's a very like literal practical application of like what we consider to be karma, right? It's something as simple as like, I meet a friend, I'm a good friend to them my whole life, they're a good friend back to me. And I think to your point about kind of this idea of like individualism and not getting, you know, too existential and dreadful about the political state, I think there's something to be said about like not just a belief in like rampant individualism, but more so a belief in like really, really localized community. That's something I hold really, really dear. And I mean, so much of like what Above the Bridge is and what I've tried to build is just a community. That's like literally like what I try to do every single day. Just build a community. And I think localized community, well, I think a good way to say this, I have a friend who talks about very often that he thinks one of the biggest differences is in the way that my generation grew up versus the way that my parents' generation grew up, is this idea that I was, like, me growing up, I was kind of existing in a global community, the internet, and I was trying to gain access to a localized community that was kind of dwindling. Whereas my parents' generation, they were growing up in a localized community that wished they had access to a globalized community. Right. So they kind of lacked empathy in regards, you know, to a lot of different things because they didn't understand the experience of individuals. But my generation has grown up with access to all those experiences. But because of that, a lot of the times they I don't know, they develop this like overly empathetic, almost like I guess like holier than thou mentality sometimes. You know, there's pros and cons to it, but I think what cuts through all of that, in my opinion, I think about this a lot, is just localized community. Is a small group of people around you that you love, that you know they're good people, and you know you can have honest dialogue with them about a variety of things, some political, some societal, some not, you know, just fucking have a meal with them, whatever. It's just like localized, strong community in the age of the internet feels so vital because sometimes things feel so fake. And like in the age of the internet, that's one thing that will never be fake is your neighbors, you know?
Well, and I mean, in addition to feeling like the feeling of fakeness, I think the other thing, and I'm so lucky, like I have such a vibrant and deep community of friends. I'm so stoked and fortunate that I don't really encounter this feeling. But like the other thing, of course, that the age of the internet it is constantly offering to us through just the pure participation is like true loneliness.
100%.
Which is very weird. And
like really true.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I'm sure that people have been lonely before. Yeah. I don't know if it's ever been spoken about in terms of it being a cultural epidemic. Yeah. Which it is now. And like, what's even stranger is like, if you are in that predicament in the moment, it's, of course, it's just still there for you. Like you can just still go back into it. Like your phone is ready to go, you know, like it'll show you more stuff. Yeah. And like, because of that, I think it's put a lot of people, I mean, I teach guitar sometimes, and I've taught kids that are absolutely just like fried. Like they're just fried. Yeah. And it's not that they're bad people. It's like their willingness to go out and I mean, I think if you're a young kid and you're in school and you're like playing sports, like some of that stuff is obviously built in if you're willing to participate in like a program or something. But like if you're not, and assuming that you don't really love to be by yourself, like it's a wild thing. Like loneliness is right there waiting for you. And it's like kind of, it's become a norm. And I think it's a really peculiar part of this time that we live in. And I don't know what the solve is, of course. Like, I don't know if we're all going to go back to the land, but
yeah, I mean, it's sad because unless you, as a young person, a really young person, or unless you as a really young person has the foresight to, you know, see how this ends, or you have somebody in your life that has the foresight to see how this ends, you're just kind of fucked. Like you will be born more or less, like hypothetically, with a phone in your hand. Yeah. Like that will be the case for all future generations. Yeah. And now it's like the only way to escape it is to have somebody in your life that is like literally encouraging you to actively run away from it. Now, you know, that could come, I suppose, also in like, you know, the form of somebody on the internet even, I guess, but you gotta have somebody. You literally gotta have somebody telling you to run away from this, or you're just never gonna run away from it. It's like being born with like a binky, you know? It's just like part of being a kid.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a wild thing. I can only imagine like what the next phase is, where it's like, you know, I don't know. It's obviously not going away, but to I guess like really one of your original questions, I think like in as much as people are able to tap into being really present in a show, which like I really wish, I mean, it's not to say that I don't like take a video of something or take a photo of something when I'm there. Like the amount of I mean, it's been this way for a long time, but just like the amount of phone usage at shows is insane. And I really feel like I've been to a couple comedy shows where you have to use what is it called? Those bags?
The little pouches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to those shows before.
And honestly, like, when I got there, I was like, this is so fucking pretentious. Yeah. And then like a half hour later, I was like, I'm really happy I don't have the option.
Yeah. Part of, I see what you mean though. Part of me did feel like it was pretentious too, and I did it.
Yeah. But I guess I think shows are important for people to learn so many things about just how to exist in society.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And hopefully, as time goes on, people will trust in the fact that artists do a decent job of capturing photos and video on their own, so that they can live the moment without having to sit at a show with their phone on the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many lessons on like even a greater level that can be learned from shows, like not even a musical level, but there's so many things you can learn about just like presence, like being present. I think there's a lot of lessons in the idea of like improvisation, like that you were just talking about. There's so many things you can get from live music. I mean, I grew up obsessed with live music. That's like primarily where my love of music comes from. It's kind of why I dedicated my life to it, was specifically for the live world. I'm uber obsessed with it. And I think one thing that I think about very often is just like live music, and occasionally recorded music as well, but like very often live music is the only thing, one of the only things in this world that like I hear orally and then it translates into like physical things. Like I just can't hear something I'm obsessed with musically and not move.
Yeah.
And there's not very many things in this world that do that for me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very powerful thing and very sacred. And it's very much about being in the moment and being present and listening and looking. It's like so sensory.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it is, and not to be fucking like, pretentious about it, but I think there is something that doing, like having your phone on in general, but also especially taking videos and pictures, it really pulls you out of the moment.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard to get back into the moment. It takes a couple minutes to get back into the moment. It really pulls you out of it,
Yeah, it can. I think too, that there's like there's fun, like when it really happens too. Well, the thing I really love about it is I can think of a really specific example, but like when people go off script, not even for the sake of being improv-y or something, but like when someone is compelled to make a decision that goes a little bit off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Not only everyone in the band feels it, assuming it lands, but the people that are really invested on a fan level can.
That's cool.
It's like you know that the temperature changed in the room.
That's cool.
And one of the examples that I think about is on the Dijon tour, Mike decided to start opening this song and start playing this song called "Did You See It?"
Love that song.
With a completely different approach, and it was the most like. He didn't tell any of us, like it wasn't really wasn't part of the plan, and he just did this entirely new thing. And honestly, the sound that he was going after and that he was using was like horrifying, but it was amazing. It was like all these things at the same time, and he's the best. But like he did this thing, and he's sitting right next to me, and I was just like, dude,
what was that?
What is this now? Like, where did we go? And like everyone else, like, people think they know what's coming, but then they don't. And then if it's like that show was really dynamic, and I just remember people like the people are applauding through a song that happened previously, and then all of a sudden this like Leviathan tone comes through, and then everyone is quiet because it's like it's such a rad and impactful thing that like you almost can't tell if it's like a piece of gear shorting, or if it's like a choice. And if it's a choice, then it's like, damn, like, let's go.
From a fan perspective, I feel like he makes a lot of choices like that. I feel like his intense down strums, like in his live shows, are very indicative of that. That's one thing I love about his live show. It's just like the stark, just like the huge down strums. That's really cool, man. I think adding things like that on a live level, I think you're right. I think as a fan, you can always feel the temperature change. And I think it's one of the coolest things about live music is this idea that you are literally just getting an individualized experience every single time you're in that room. That will only happen once. If there's 30 shows on the tour, every single one will be different because there's different people there, to different place, different room, different feeling in the environment. There's a million different things, but it's like that individual isolated experience will only happen once in that moment. And that's the coolest thing to me about it.
And I mean, I think that's particularly the case if that's a core value, meaning like there are, I mean, I love lots of, like, I do have space in my heart for like deeply formulaic pop music. Like I love, actually, like on the road with Ryan Beatty, like I learned through Tyler Nuffer's girlfriend, Sophie. She's obsessed with Sabrina Carpenter, right? And I was like, come on, dude, are we really doing it? And then I started to kind of like, no, she was like, no, dude, I'm telling you, like, this shit is dope.
She's good.
And so I started kind of listening, and I was like, you know what? Like, I kind of rock with this, and I can also see the humor of it and such like that. Like, she's cool. I think she's cool.
She's funny.
And I think that she's funny. And but that said, like, I think that granted, I haven't seen one of her. Actually, I did see a show of hers at a festival, but like, I won't know if they've allowed much freedom to be baked in other than her saying like, what's up San Francisco, like let's talk about like chowder bowls or whatever, or like what's up Cleveland, let's talk about whatever the fuck happens in Cleveland. I don't know, but
dude, like, sorry to cut you off, but just saying, I've been to hundreds of concerts in San Francisco, and that was so spot on. I had the clam chowder on the pier and it was insane, the bread bowl, it's like shut up.
No, it's that's what I mean, like but I think that like not to, I guess, bring it back to Dijon. I have to, I suppose. It's the most exciting music I've ever played on tour, because it's just like, everyone's approach is just like, oh, this like literally this piece of gear stopped working. Like, who cares? Like, we're just gonna go. And the music that I make is actually, it's funny, I'm called to make it, so it's like, it's what's in my brain. I can't really do it any other way, but like, it's so composed that I can't like I can't improvise on it. But also, like, it's not like verse chorus songs, like it's like its own thing. But like, it's funny, there's just, and like, so I guess what I'm saying is, I participate in a thing, I do it on my own terms, and yet I still am kind of like, I can't wait to do this other thing where improvisation is more baked into the recipe.
100%. And I think, I mean, I've seen Dijon live, I guess just once. I've seen Mk.gee live twice, and both of them, they have this level of grit that I think can only be expressed very often through improv. Because a lot of the times, like, I mean, obviously vocally, but then it goes back to things like tone and gear and a lot of like the I don't know, just the crazy instrumentation of it all. So much of it feels so gritty and so grimy and so like underproduced so often that I think in the live setting, they both do such a great job at like incorporating this live setup where it genuinely feels like it's as gritty as the record, which I think is a rare thing. I think a lot of the times, artists that have a pretty squeaky clean mix and master, it's really difficult to translate some extra grit live. It's really difficult to like not make it sound like the squeaky clean polished pop record live. But like, I think, God, Mk.gee's a great example of this, because I think like a song like Elysis, where like it's more or less like, there's some like synth pop motifs in there. It's not a super like experimental song structure wise by any stretch of the imagination, but the way that he plays it live, just dynamically, is just huge. Like the peaks and the valleys of it feel so much like this cannot be the same thing every night. It needs to be different every single time, and that's what makes it special. He and like my friend is the guy that was our tour manager for Dijon went on to work with Mike. His name is Brian Byrne. He's everybody's favorite dude. He was telling me when they were in Europe, I think it was Europe, but like at some point on this last run of shows that he did, that they played I think they played in one show, I think they played D&M 11 times. I saw that video.
And like, dude, I'm just so down with that, because Mike is an amazing, like, he's such a scholar of music. He knows so much. It's so weird how much he knows. But there was a time, man, like before, like, it's, corporate control of radio stations happened, where, I mean, it was the case. Like, probably not even in my life, but like, I know that my dad would tell me that sometimes, like growing up here in LA, he would be cruising around, DJ would play something, and then he'd be like, we're doing it again.
Fuck it, run it back.
Like, it's so dope. I'm so fucking fired up on this thing.
I love that.
And I just don't know if that could ever happen again. And I think it's outside on a major, like, obviously on a college radio station or something, or like an NTS, it's possible. But I don't know. You got to go with what feels really good, and not just like with what people want sometimes. And I'm sure the thing about Mike's music too, or Dijon, is like, there's probably people there that, I guess, going into it, like, didn't necessarily, probably like weren't expecting that level of grit or improv or whatever, fluidity. But I mean, like, hopefully that those people that were surprised by that can experience something like that and then come away with the knowledge that that's a possibility in music.
That's a great way to put it. I think it's like being Damn, dude, that's a really good way of putting it, actually. It's almost, and this is a funny, like, metaphor, but it's like when you're scrolling TikTok, I think there's a little thing in your brain that is just engineered to be like, what if the next one's something crazy?
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about that in the live world as well.
Totally.
Where it's like, I think, like, when I saw him live, he played D&M back to back, and the second time he brought out Dijon. I saw him at the Form or whatever.
Palladium.
I get all of these. There's like 4 venues that I get confused in LA. They're all like these mid-sized venues.
Yeah.
Like these like 1,000 to 3,000 caps. I get them all confused.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I saw him that night, and such a moment. It was such a moment, and I think that, dude, like, I mean, he's only one example, but there's so many others, like, of artists who are just so good at curating this moment in real life that the whole room feels it. The whole room feels it. And I think that's such an art, dude. It's such an art. I think that's like what making a live show should be about. It's like creating moments. And it's putting the 10s next to the 1s and these peaks and valleys and the whole theatrics of everything and the dynamics of it all. It's such a crucial part of it, I think.
You know, it's I'd never thought I would talk about this on a podcast or anywhere, really. We were just in Ireland with Lizzie, and I don't have any reason, like, again, this what I'm going to say might sound like spicy or something, but it's not. Thus far in my life, I've had no real calling to investigate the music of Jacob Collier. Like, I just haven't. And that's cool. That's fine. Like, hey, you might not either.
Dude, you don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's true. You guys might be all in, but like,
no.
The point is like, he was playing in Dublin the night before we played. I think that's the way it worked. And we got invited, and it was very nice of him. And going into it, I was kind of like, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is for me. And ultimately, it's like probably not for me still. But what I saw that night, I mean, he is like a pretty limitless musician.
For sure.
And I did see him improvise in a way that was really pretty mind-blowing. And when I sat down there, I was one of the guys in the group where I was like, oh man, like I wish we were at a restaurant or something. And then 20 minutes later, I was just like, oh, I see what he's going for.
Yeah.
And it really, like, that's a person who could go in any direction by himself for as long as humanly possible. Like, it's kind of inconceivable.
You're right. Yeah.
And so,
yeah, it's true.
Knowing that it was a I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I have deep respect, and I don't know if I was properly converted to Collierism, but like I'm down. Like, I'm fucking down. I can be down, and I'll probably never listen to one of his records ever again.
I'm gonna be honest. It's become a bit of a meme on this show that Jacob Collier is not my favorite guy
really?
artistically. I'm sure he's a wonderful human being. I'm sure he's absolutely wonderful. But his I think I talked about this like 4 days ago on a podcast, but someone described it to me as NAMM music, and I do see that. But again, like, I'm sure he's amazing. But
he has a song. Someone told me about this.
Yeah,
he has a song where I guess it starts, for all the music dorks out there, conventional. The tuning convention is 440, A440. That's what we all tune everything to. Apparently, he has a song where it starts, I think, at 432, like, and everything drifts up to 440.
What?
And dude, exactly. It's like, well, I guess this man really ran out of stuff to be, or like not even ran out, but like he was trying to do something totally new. And
what the fuck?
I mean, in a way, it's like, I don't need it to happen, but like, I listened to it and I was like,
that's insane.
Okay, like I salute you for trying.
So he's tuning in like semitones? I don't even understand what that means.
I don't know how it works, but I do know that like if you had a synth, you could retune it on the fly. You could be that specific about it. I don't know how it happened, but I need to know more about it. But like,
what the hell?
It's pretty NAMM-y, right?
Yeah,
but
true.
Also like, it's an interesting idea, and whether I like it or not, I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm also glad it's happening for people that are
into it,
to be like, oh wait, like what is a frequency? Like literally, what is that?
Yeah.
In the same way that I don't like Dave Matthews, but I do completely respect Dave Matthews and his band for basically like fooling millions of people into listening to music that has bizarre time signatures
100%
and not knowing it.
Yeah.
And like it's like, you know, whatever he's doing, it's like they're still selling beer and t-shirts.
You're right. Yeah.
Everyone got like deeply wealthy while like forcing weird time on people. And I think it's like I think it's cool. I don't really know why I think that's cool, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't need to like it. You don't either, but like I just think it's like, oh, that's a cool thing to have done.
I totally appreciate it as well. I think like what you were saying about, or what we were talking about earlier about the live moment. I mean, I've never seen Jacob Collier live, but everybody describes it to me in the same way. They like the chorus stuff or the choir stuff that he does is just absolutely insane, and I have a lot of respect for that. I just think like I don't know, there's certain people, I think at least this is my outlook on it, I think there's certain people who like they are so in the weeds of music theory and trying to do something that is just theoretically new and theoretically different, that sometimes that comes at the exchange or the expense of some songwriting vigor, I think. And there's something to be said about that, but I think there's also people who like, you know, strike a really cool balance. Like a really cool record, I think it's a good example of this, is Flying Microtonal Bananas by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
They're incredible.
Yeah, where it's all just like microtonal guitars. Like it's still, you know, it's still the album has a lot of pop appeal. It's not like overly, and not to say that, you know, anything with incredible amounts of experimentation is like bad, but like I think there's a lot of experimentation on that record, and it still maintains some of the cool structural songwriting isms that make it special and catchy.
Totally. They're great to bring up because
they're nuts, man.
They're incredible, and also like I am so happy that they it's them that's bringing it to be, but like I'm really excited that there's like a network of like a booking agent and venues that are willing to take a chance on them, because like I know that I used to live in Seattle and they played like the big huge like thing that you can accomplish there is playing at the Gorge, and they played at the Gorge, and I think that's just like so incredible that they were able to stitch that together.
They just did the Hollywood Bowl. Yeah, it's pretty insane how big they've gotten, and they're not even American, they're Australian. It's crazy how big they are in the States even. Yeah, dude, I feel like there's a lot of interesting like psych rock stuff that comes out of Australia, like be it like Pond or even like Tame Impala or King Gizzard, or like there's some cool, even like some cool Wombats records. Like I feel like there's a lot of interesting psych rock that comes out of Australia that I guess I don't think about enough. Yeah, it's great. We were just there, and it's like it's a interesting place because I don't know if you've ever been there, but like basically there's only 4 cities, and they're all in the south. What?
No, that's not true. They're like basically on like, well, I think it is true that most of them are on like the bottom crescent of the landmass, and I don't know what it's comparable to, because here we can kind of reach out and touch the middle of the country if we want. It's not to say that we don't have like wide swaths of like desolate landscape, but like there's just nothing else there besides the cities.
It's like the outback, right?
It's deeply the outback, and I mean, granted, I didn't go, but like I get the impression that it's something that you really don't do on accident. It's like you have to really, really, really go there on purpose. Yeah. You know? And you better have the gear to survive it. You know, I think it's pretty unforgiving.
There's something really, really interesting about a whole country or a whole continent that's like that, really, though, because it's actually so opposite of what America is. It's like America effectively has replaced all those places with cities, and then it's like we fill in the blanks with nature, whereas like Australia has kind of taken the opposite approach. That's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'd like to go back there's I don't know if you guys have any viewers in Australia, but
I'm not sure.
In the off chance that you guys are watching, I did go to a restaurant called the Continental Deli in Sydney. That was the coolest place I've ever been.
Why?
It just like, it was this kind of vibe where like my good friend Emily Retsis, who's a bass player, recommended that I go. She's like, dude, this is essential. And I went, and from what I understand, I didn't really know this until the end, but I think it's a cooperative restaurant.
Interesting.
So like everyone that's obviously on the clock, has a stake in the success of the restaurant. And so it was all these people wearing like, you know, kind of like white lab coat, like proper thing, but they were all so cool and the food was so good. When I was leaving, I really did have the thought that like, if these guys offered me a job, I would just do it.
Fuck it.
That would be my thing. Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
That's so cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Talking a bit more about your record. I was curious because it's your trajectory as an artist is so interesting to me, because you've spent so many years playing for such incredible artists and helping with production and playing for so many incredible artists and doing all these things where, you know, you weren't like the front facing thing in a lot of these. You were, you know, not behind the scenes, but you're just doing them. You're helping a lot of these artists, which is something that's really incredible and very selfless. And I think there's so much beauty in that on so many levels. But I think now that you're here and pursuing an artist project, you know, I'm not sure if you've done that previously in the past.
No,
or
this is my first one.
Awesome. That's so crazy. What do you think have been the most intimidating or the most difficult parts of like launching yourself into it, and what has it taught you about like the different, you know, has it made you think of anything differently?
This is gonna sound funny, but the answer is no.
Interesting.
Because the one thing that I was really certain about with this is that I knew how I wanted it to be, and I knew what the vision was, and luckily the guys at R&R supported me and, like, you know, gave me the green light to do whatever I wanted.
That's cool.
And I just knew I was so committed and kind of in love with this like span of music that I wrote that it was impossible for me to do it any other way. So I was basically just like, my approach was, well, like I know what it is, and like if people don't receive it well, like they should go see a doctor, because like this shit is fucking good, and I stick to it. I'm really proud of it. And I think too that like I don't know. I just think, I mean, like what I guess I got a lot of positive feedback from that, because, you know, a lot of people said something to me which is really valuable, and that is because it's 20 minutes. A lot of people used it as their chance to kind of like put the phone down for the day, or like at least lay down or go on a walk or something and just take it all in at once. Yeah. Because, you know,
wow.
I think that's a format that I'm going to stick with all my music.
Cool.
Because why not?
Yeah.
But also, yeah, like I think a lot of people, you know, it's like if for the people that didn't know, that's what it was going to be, and then they put it on and they were like, wow, it's just not stopping. And then the next thing you know, they're in a different mindset. And so I knew, like, I didn't really necessarily think about that as like a goal going into it, but at the same time, I'm like, I couldn't be happier to hear that as like a response. And also, again, like I knew what I wanted to do, and I was able to do it, and I feel really proud of it. And I think that is the reinforcement there is like, truly, whatever you want to do is the only thing that you should do. You know,
100%. Like
there are people that are way better than I can ever imagine being at writing music in a formulaic way, which is not a bad thing. Like, songs need choruses and they need bridges and stuff like that. I just can't really yet. I haven't really felt myself predestined or something to like write music in that way. But there are people that exist in the music biz who are like, I have to write the perfect 2-minute and 45-second song. And yeah, that's a job. 100%. If it's your passion, then it's your passion. Yeah. If it's the thing that you're doing to keep the lights on, to me, it starts to become a little bit more precarious as far as like, what are we actually doing? You know? And again, I like short songs. I like it all, but like, I guess just do what, you can only do what you really, 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 really want to do. And I mean, that's the thing that I was positively reinforced. Like, again, it sounds funny to say that I didn't learn anything, and that's a really shorthand way of answering. That's not to say that I didn't, but like, I just feel I feel a little bit more like fortified and certain the choice that I made.
That's really cool. That's really cool, man. A note on what you were saying about a lot of people sort of taking it as like this environmental thing almost, where like it was a 20-minute span of like, you know, a soundscape, environment, whatever, their walk for the day, whatever it meant for them. Literally this morning, we did an interview with a guy named Jev. He's a rapper. He lives in Canada now, but he's from the Congo originally. And we were talking about like a lot of like traditional music from the Congo. And he said something that was really interesting this morning. And he told me that the vast majority of songs in the Congo, there's just like the majority of songs come out of that area, they're like generally 10 minutes. And I asked why, and he said because they all soundtrack occasions. And I was like, that's so interesting.
That's really
so
cool.
It's like songs are like a party song, or this is like a driving song, or like it's such a different way to look at music. But I think there's something really beautiful about it. I think a lot about this within like ambient music. I love ambient music. There's this band that I'm sure you're familiar with, the North Americans. I'm sure you know them. Yeah. In a similar lane to some of the stuff you just put out. It's kind of like, you know, different string instrument tracked. I don't want to call it ambient music, but just instrumental music. Yeah. Instrumental music in general. That band, and I think their latest record does such an amazing job at like soundtracking a location in my brain or like a feeling in my brain. And that's something that I think is really interesting about this record. And it's very different. I would imagine it's a very different process than pursuing something and telling a story lyrically. You're doing so effectively sonically, but I think when you extend it in this period of time, it almost gives people the leeway to make it their own. Yeah. Which is something that I think is so cool and such a cool creative choice.
Thank you so much. That's such cool commentary. I'll say too, in terms of letting people make it their own thing, something happened to me where it kind of a meaning came to me about it way after the fact. And you know, the final piece, or like the final section, like it's like totally a sign off. It's made obvious by the lyrics, but like I think that to me the whole thing, like much in the way that people overlay Dark Side of the Moon to Alice in Wonderland. I mean, I'm sorry, dude, Wizard of Oz. Like, you know, in a way that's appropriate and that works for people.
I would not have known the difference between the two, to be honest, if you didn't correct yourself.
Have you done it?
Done what? That? No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
You just, like, people take the record and put it over the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done it.
Oh, you have to?
Yeah, 'cause to be honest with you, you could have said Fairly Odd Parents, I would have believed you. I didn't. I just knew people did that.
And that's the weird thing. It could work.
Yeah.
But on the third roar, anyone that hasn't tried it, on the third roar of the MGM Lion, the beginning of the Wizard of Oz, you drop the needle on Dark Side of the Moon, and it goes. And it goes really, like, insanely well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, dude, I hope that you do it soon.
Yeah. That's crazy. I did not know that. Have you done this, Mario? Yeah, that's insane. I didn't know that.
It's a thing. Oh, for sure. And it eventually falls apart, but like for the time that it lasts, it's kind of uncanny. But what I was saying is I sort of realized that the way that I look at my record is like it's like a post-death cycle of like of someone. I mean, just bear with me. Like the cycle of navigating what you did while you were on Earth, and then finally getting to the end where it's like, all right, man, like, just I'm gonna put you back down there, and just remember you did okay. Let's do it again. Let's do it better.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah, it's. I think the reprise at the end is so interesting to me. Like where it comes in, I was thinking about this morning because I listened to it like 3 or 4 times this morning, just thinking about it. I really think the song would feel so different if that passage was in the beginning. I think the fact that it's at the end, there's something about it that feels so huge, and it's you know, in terms of like the sonics, the dynamics of the track, that's not like one of the biggest moments in terms of like the instrumentation that's on it. Not really at all until the solo at the end, but not really at all. But there's something about the way that it comes in. It just feels conclusatory. Like it feels like an ending. It feels like you went through all this different, this previous 17 minutes to get to this point where it just kind of sums up like the sonic journey in like a nice passage in a way that I think is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
The dream, which I don't have the budget to do this, but the dream was going to be, we were going to be, and I guess like it's weirdly coming more and more plausible that I could do it for literally no money. But the idea was that we were going to do a trio or a quartet. It was me, Tyler Nuffer, Carl on bass, Dory on keys. My idea was that we were going to do us at this place in San Diego. There's a cliff in La Jolla. We're going to play the entire piece on the cliff, and then during the final piece, the idea was going to be to do a video on video CG overlay of a massive tidal wave coming to obscure the sunset and then wipe out all of society. And I can't do that yet. I don't have the dough for that yet, but I'm going to get there.
I don't think it'd be that expensive.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Like it's changed so much that we could be getting to the point where it's actually plausible.
Yeah, that'd be so funny, bro. Yeah. Wait, so you like see San Diego just like turning into rubble? That's so funny.
Yeah.
I want to ask too, like, why now? Like I mean, you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
And you had never like pursued an active front-facing artist project. Why now?
That's a great question. I think because I'm lazy, like really lazy. But also, I just think the strangest thing about it is all of the sections. It really did just take like a while, years, honestly, for me to understand how they, or even that they could all fit together. And then once that they did, then I was like, oh, I see. Like it's time to, like, I could have put stuff out before, and I guess maybe I should have or something, but like it doesn't matter. But I think
whoa,
dude, Paul Walker,
that was
RIP
crazy
out there. Vin Diesel.
You know, I was 3 minutes away from Paul Walker when he died.
Oh no, dude.
I was staying at the hotel that he crashed at.
Dang.
Yeah, when I was a kid.
What a trip.
Mm-hmm.
That was so crazy.
That was crazy. That was so loud. I don't know.
However you guys handle ambient sound, you might as well keep that in.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It's pretty epic.
It's almost beautiful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I just it took me quite a while for me to realize like what I had. And then once I kind of allowed myself to just let it be what it was going to be, like I wasn't like if I had a section of a song that was 45 seconds, I would beat myself up about it and say like, dude, this, like, yeah, it's cool, but like it needs to be longer, and then because it's not longer, you don't have anything. But I did realize through kind of luck or redundancy or repetitive or just being in like the rut of enjoying playing these things that I had.
Yeah.
It took it a long time for me to understand that it was something that it could all jigsaw together. Yeah. So now that I know that that's like really what I like to do and that's my lane, I have started working on the second, and it's like it's more the same. It's actually very different, but like the way that the music is written is similar.
Interesting. Similar in regards to like you're just writing these solidified pieces, whether they be like a minute or 3 minutes, and then just putting them together.
Yeah.
So how do you build out the transitional periods in between? So if you have like piece A and piece B, how do you like, you know, because I assume those are created at two different environments, two different points, and maybe even have different instruments. Is it difficult to work backwards and then make the transition seamless?
It's a great question. The creation process for me is that I do write it all by myself, and then I go to hang with Tyler Nuffer because he's kind of like, I play pedal steel too, but I'm like actually not good at it. Like he's like incredible.
I can't believe it. I mean,
I play lap steel. Okay. Pedal steel is a really deep thing, and like for people that are dedicated to it, like I would almost feel bad saying that I was a player, because I'm just like I'm really just not very good at it.
To be entirely frank, sorry to cut you off, but to be entirely frank with you, the I'm not entirely positive on the difference between lap steel and pedal steel. It's quite literally just like the build of the instrument and the size of it and the tones it produces, right?
A pedal steel is an instrument that has 4 legs that underneath the strings there are a network of levers and pulleys and stuff, and that, so like when you're playing it and you push down on these pedals with your left foot, it'll cause 2 or more strings typically 2 at a time, to be bent up a whole step or a half step, and then there's ways to lower them. And so a lap steel is basically just like a guitar that you're turning on a horizontal axis.
Yes.
So like you can't pick up a pedal steel and like play it. I can't be like, oh, I want to put it on the table now. Like, you can't do that.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like it's they're I think the pedal steel is like really one of the greatest and most unique American inventions.
Yeah.
And it's like super mystifying and really, I think it's like a miracle discovery that someone figured it out.
Yeah.
It's a really crazy thing.
Yeah. And well, I mean, it's led to some of the greatest pieces of American music ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And yeah, to Tyler, he has he instinctually really knows now, after especially going through the first record with me, that he knows like the stuff that satisfies and excites me. And so we can come together and then we can write and kind of get a pretty like well formulated blueprint of what we're going to do. And then, you know, on this one, it seems like it's just going to be me and him, and then a bassist and a drummer. And it's going to be, I won't do any spoilers, but it's going to be, that'll be the lineup. It's going to be very different.
Yeah. The transitional periods on this one, was that like one of the more difficult parts of growing out this song, was taking these sections that you already had written and then growing that period in between? What was that process like? Like, did you have to work backwards? Or,
sometimes.
Because in my brain, like, it feels like taking all these puzzle pieces and then, like, putting them together, but they don't totally fit, and then finding a way to make them fit. It's like shaving off the edges and stuff.
Yeah. I talked about this on a podcast with the Fretboard Journal, but the way that I knew, when I knew I had a thing, it was when I got this Instagram sent me an advertisement that I succumbed to, and it was for,
as we all do.
Yeah, it was for a rolling capo.
Rolling capo?
A rolling capo. So it was a capo that you put on your guitar, and then with your thumb, you could change the position of it on the fly.
Oh, interesting.
And it wasn't until I got that, it just looked cool, so I got it. It wasn't until I got that and started moving it around in real time that I knew that I could fit these pieces together that weren't harmonically aligned at the time they were written.
Interesting.
So kind of dumb luck. Thank you, Instagram.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So it just allowed you to figure out, like, that you could kind of on the fly make these quick-witted transitions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That, like, such a small piece of tech like that would lead to that grand of an idea.
Totally.
I guess it's a testament to just keep fucking plugging it and that stuff, man, and making it work.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because like I said, like, you've done so many things in music now, like, for so long. You put a lot of different hats. So kind of like growing up, were you more inclined, like, was your dream like, I want to play for other people, I want to produce, I want to do all these things, or was it like, I want to have an artist project? And now kind of doing it, is there a part of you that, like, I guess not compares the two, but is there a part of you that feels more like, is the fulfillment different? Does it feel different? Like, when you're done doing one, does it feel different than being done doing the other? And when you were a kid, did you dream of doing this primarily, or did you dream of doing the playing and the touring and the production?
Man, so the feeling of satisfaction is present in both. I really love doing it in either format. I think that there is a degree of like enhanced nerve rackitude when it's your own thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I can say this: I grew up with a dad who was really, really into bluegrass. And that the reason why that's notable is because I was obsessed with music when I was growing up, and so I would get these records or CDs and I would study the names of all the guys in the band, and then I would realize that all those guys,
same dudes.
Well, they're all the same dudes, but they would all play on each other's solo projects.
Wow.
So then I thought, like, oh, it's cool. Like, it's cool to give yourself to something that's just good. You know? And then, like, hopefully there's another thing that's good, and then when it's your time, you can make your thing and hopefully it's good. And your buddies will be there to support you. It's weird. I didn't really think about it in terms of like a utopianism or anything, but I just remember thinking like, oh, these guys are all great. And like, I know like the more liner notes I read, like the more it's almost predictable. Like I could tell you who's going to be on the record before I saw it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what did I dream of? I mean, I guess I was so obsessed with, I had dreams of being a personality, but I also did just think it was cool to be able to exist in music and I just always thought that like my dad would take me to go see shows, and I just always thought like, oh, these guys are literally the coolest people that have ever lived. And like they could have been like miserable. You know?
Man.
I wouldn't have known because I was young at the time, but like I remember seeing one of the first shows I ever saw was this guitarist named Eric Johnson. And I don't know, it was just such a cool like moment of like guitar heroics, and he's really tasteful and cool. Like he's not even like he's like a guitar hero that's kind of like palatable. And so my mom and dad took me to the show, and they were like down with it. It wasn't a strain on them, but I do remember like looking and kind of studying all the guys in the band and thinking like, oh, each one of these guys is actually really cool. You know what I mean? And I just was like, oh, that's like it's just like a cool thing to do.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, there's other cool things to do too, but that was where I was at.
It almost seems like your perspective was so ingrained in just like a love of the art and nothing else, which is interesting because I think a lot of kids grow up wanting to be rock stars. Like a lot of kids grow up and like, I want to be the face. Like I want to be Jim Morrison. I want to be Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
And it seems like your perspective growing up was like, damn, the guys who are making these guys sound cool are pretty damn cool themselves. Cool.
Yeah. I'm like, and I'm like much in the same way. Like I whatever that archetype of personality makes me, like I do love the idea of the, I mean, whoever's in front of the camera is always cool, but like, I love the fact that a director is every bit as valuable to a film as the actors. Yeah. And if that's the opinion that you have, you can look at the work of a director that you develop an affinity for over the years, and then you can realize like, oh yeah, like not only do I like all their stuff, but then sometimes they cast certain similar, like you'll see dependable faces in their films or whatever it is. It's like even the Coen brothers, they use a guy named Roger Deakins to do the director of photography work. And it's like when his name shows up on the thing, it's like, oh good, they got him again.
It's reliability.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, there's something so cool about that. I totally agree. And it's also like, it's really cool to work back in that capacity because it's less obvious, because it's cool. Like I think damn, I don't know. I always forget his name. I really should know his name. He's like one of the most famous directors ever. I'm just like film illiterate. He's the guy who directed the Sweater Song music video at Weezer. I don't.
Oh, dude.
Mario, what's his name?
Take us there, dude.
He's.
That's an interesting call.
We know his name.
Yeah, we do. I just forgot. I know, but the fact that you mentioned that as the example is the thing that actually took me out of it.
Really?
But I'm stoked for the result.
He's like super fan. I don't know why I can't remember. Spike Jonze, right?
Spike Jonze.
Yeah, Spike Jonze. Yeah, it came to me a second ago. Yeah, but Spike Jonze is an interesting example because it's like, you wouldn't think he'd work on something like that, but then you work his, you backtrack a lot of his work, and he's worked with like bands that are like nothing like absolutely nothing like Weezer or like all these other artists. And it's so interesting to kind of like take somebody who's behind the scenes and realize that sometimes their taste extends far past their most famous work, which sometimes is not as true with some like forward facing artist projects. Generally like you can at least gauge like where they're going to go, how they got there, and even if you're listening to somebody's discography throughout years and years and years, they tend to exist in like at least a comparable world. It's very rare that like they'll full pivot. Producers though, they full pivot all the time.
Well, what's funny about this idea too is that it's funny that we can think, and it's not illogical to be a fan of something and learn to expect a certain kind of thing from that person. But it's to assume that we know the totality of what they like, and that's not
true.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
And so some people like Brian Eno, who frankly, like one of the all-time biggest bosses that there will ever be. Yeah. but I don't love all of his stuff. And I don't, and the cool thing is, like, I don't think that he does either. He just gets an idea and he just is like, I have to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm gonna put it out because like, why not? Who cares?
I mean, that's a great example.
Oh,
like,
you know what else too?
Huh.
My favorite Mac DeMarco record is the one. It's just the last one he put out. It's like 200 songs.
Oh yeah. It's just like a bunch of demos
on Joseph. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I listened to the entire thing.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's not that it doesn't fit with like my narrative of who he is as an artist. But it's just, I love the idea of like, here's all this weird shit that I get into by myself.
Yeah.
Like, take it or leave it.
It's very much an artist's project, which I think is something that's so interesting and so cool.
Oh, I also want to say one more thing. This is a deep vibe that I hope someone out there chases down, particularly the people that are watching that play guitar. There is a Dutch guitarist named Mk.gee.
Mk.gee?
Yeah, crazy last name. And maybe like if you guys do show notes, like drop it in there.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a time where, so if you go to Spotify or whatever you listen to music on and you search his name, there is, I mean, there are hundreds of records, first of all. And then I think that there was a moment in his life where he was putting out a record every day, where he would come up with some weird concept at night, record it on his iPhone, and then publish it the next day.
What the hell?
And like, what's weird is that they're all, to me, very good. That's just my taste. But like, I do love that. Like, why not? Who cares? Just like let it rip.
Well, because we've gotten so, and I think this is like, I feel like the social media age has just like exacerbated this trend, dude. But like, we're so religious with what we do and do not show people on the internet. Like, we're so tied to it, and we're so married to this idea of, I don't mean, call it what you want, I call it aura, but it's like, we're so married to this idea of like showing people this ultra limited amount so they have this like perceived notion of us and kind of gatekeeping who we really are. Mac DeMarco is interesting because he cuts through all of that. I mean, his most popular song is about him sticking a drumstick up his ass. Like, he cuts through all of that, and I think he's a very unique figure because of that. And I think that last record he put out is such a testament to it, because dude, some of the songs are just like horns, like they're all so weird, like, and they're all so different. The Brian Eno example is so fascinating as well, because like, I definitely think you're right, and I think the reason I think you're right is because if you compare like a Talk record to like Music for Airports, very different taste-wise, very different. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who loves both of those. You know, they might like them both, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who loves both of them. So then the question becomes, did Brian Eno love both of them? I don't know. It's hard to say. Or maybe he just had an appreciation for one and loved the other one.
Sure. Yeah, I did before the... there's a... Here in LA, there was a fire event that disrupted everyone's life.
Don't know if you heard about it.
But it started. Me and a couple buddies signed up for the Brian Eno School of Song that started in January.
What's that?
It's School of Song is a cool web resource where you can. They get awesome teachers, people like him, to teach a class. And the way that it works is that you. One day of the week there's a lecture, and then he sets you free on some prompts. You write songs, and then at the end of the next week you share those ideas. Cool. It was cool. I only actually made it through one of them because the fire happened, and I really couldn't allow myself to be like, it was really hard for me to tune into a webinar. I was like, this doesn't feel appropriate. But the one that I got through was really incredible, and just like through his framework of thinking about songwriting and just whatever I wrote a song really quickly, and it was absolutely because of what he instructed us to do and how to think about doing it. And so I was thrilled by that. But yeah, I mean, like did you see the documentary? The
Lizzie one?
No, the Eno documentary.
Oh, the Eno documentary.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. a filmmaker named Gary Hustwit made a Brian Eno documentary, and the idea is that it's true. He went on a film tour and showed it, and every time that the film was screened, it was different, because all that he would have to do would tell it, he made this software engine that would sift through metadata to output a new version of the movie every night.
But it was just like compiled with Brian Eno footage?
Yeah.
What?
And he also, in interviews and like, you know, I don't really know how he does it, but the idea is that like the only real constraint there is that Gary, the filmmaker, could say, okay, software application, like I want you to make one today that's 20 minutes long, but then tomorrow I want you to make one that's 3 days long. And they had enough footage where they could do it.
That's really scary.
Yeah. Well, it's to make this is kind of a tangent, but like the weird thing about that is that like I know people. I saw it. It was screened in LA for 2 nights at a theater. I know friends that were at the showing before the night that I was at, and they said that they confirmed it was in fact super different. To the point where there were certain quotes that I thought were really interesting, and I saw it on a Thursday, and then I would ask my friend who saw it on a Wednesday if that quote was there, and it wasn't. And I thought that was interesting too, because like he's just such a cool thinker that there's so much gold to mine from that I would have assumed that the thing that excited me was like absolutely essential, but it's just not. And I think that's a really cool idea too.
There's something nerve-wracking about the technology though.
Yeah. Like, and one more thing, if you're nerve-wracked about it.
Yeah.
Check this out. He was saying like, okay, so I made this movie. I'm like, it's amazing. I'm very proud of it. The technology is cool. We did it. But now I can't find anyone that's willing to stream it, because if you are in this room and I'm across the fence from you, and we each press play on this thing on a Netflix or an HBO,
we can't talk about it.
We can talk about it, but it has to output completely different things for us. At any given time, if 1 million people are doing that on the globe, like that's a lot of computational power.
Yeah.
So he was like, I made a thing that basically I can't like sell to a streamer.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to dedicate the computer power to me.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think maybe they'll get there at some point, but like,
I hope they don't.
Yeah. I hope they don't either.
Yeah, that's kind of terrifying to me, dude. There's something about like that really feels like it opens up like deep fake potential, where like you could almost, I mean, honestly, you can practically already do this, but like you can almost like allude to anybody having any belief system if you can just pull out of things that they've said throughout their whole life. I'm not gonna lie, like I've done 176 long form interviews on the internet with different musicians and people who work in music. If somebody wants to make me out to like be anything, they probably could.
Oh yeah, they have all the vocal data they need to just rock.
Like they probably have all the vocal data they need in like 15 of these. Yeah. Which is kind of terrifying. Not that I'm anything and anybody would ever want to do that, but like it is kind of a terrifying thought in a way.
No, it's trippy. I think too, the one when you said I hope they don't, the thing that I thought about first was I hope that this film becomes a kind of rarefied deal that people talk about. Yeah. And maybe there will be a film tour of it again next year, and people will be more motivated to go because they know that they can, like a concert tour, that they can only see it the way that they see it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Or like it'd be crazy if they didn't know. Like there was this, my friend recently was telling me about this YouTuber. He's like he makes like kids videos, like some video game YouTuber. And he was telling me that this guy like got really sick of like doing this. He was doing it for like 8 years, and then he just like made an AI that essentially made his videos for him. It was the exact same thing. The face cam was fake, like the gameplay was fake, like, it was all fake. Whoa! And no one noticed. Wow! And his videos actually started like going up in views for the first time in years. And then he came out and like said like some people started to speculate it after like a year of doing this, and then he came out and like made a video about it. And people were like really upset and like commenting or whatever. But at the end of the video, he reveals that was also AI. Like he made the AI reveal video.
Amazing.
With AI.
Amazing.
So that's kind of terrifying to me. I think the deep fake potential is like kind of terrifying for sure.
Yeah.
Especially I don't know.
And I think too, like the thing about that is like the fact that you and I even know the fact that you and I even know that deep fakes are possible.
Yeah.
To me, that's just all that means is like the technology that's available to us as consumers.
Yeah.
Is like 30 times crazier in another realm of like someone that like whether it's a film studio or something more nefarious than that. Like, it's like, I mean, that train has absolutely left the station.
Yeah, it's gone for sure. It's terrifying.
It's crazy.
Dude, harking back to one thing you said that I thought was really interesting. It was, you kind of briefly said it, but you said that pursuing a solo artist project now is less nerve-wracking because you've done all these things in the past. And I wanted to ask about that. When you like went into doing this, I'm sure there were plenty of things that you had learned from, you know, a lot of these big tours and a lot of these things that you've worked on, a lot of the people you played for in the past that like kind of went on to like be lessons and things that you would hark back to when you pursue your own stuff. And I was curious if throughout, I guess more specifically the touring journey, were there any, or just any kind of thing you worked on, were there any artists that you worked on that like you think really taught you a lot in regards to your solo material? Any artists that you worked with specifically that like you learned a lot from, that you were able to implement that into your solo stuff, or even just any tours, I guess, in general? Like when you were making the record, did you hark back to any certain experiences that you think like you learned from that kind of helped to change how the record sounded?
I don't think it changed how it sounded, but I can say that like there have been a couple people that I've been able to work with in a touring capacity that the message that I come away with from them is just to basically like force yourself, if it's not naturally your way of existing, like just to truly like be fearless. And it's way easier said than done, but there are certain people that I've worked with, Dijon being one of them. There was a while where it seems like truly a lifetime ago, but there was a while where I was occasionally in a band called Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. And that frontman, Alex Ebert, is truly, I think, one of the all-time great frontmen. I've seen him just conjure things out of the fans and audiences and musicians that are like, it's like he's a powerful guy. And again, you know, there's everyone I've worked with can teach a lesson like that. There was one experience particularly that really left a mark with me, and I still like try. I mean, there's so many different lessons to be taken from it, but I was playing in a band. Do you know who Ethan Greska is?
Yeah, he's incredible.
So Ethan,
we were just talking about him actually earlier today. His piano pieces are some of my favorite things in the world.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
So Ethan and his sibling had a band called the Bell Brigade back in the day, and I toured with them. And on one tour, we were supporting these two cool bands. One of them were guys from here that I've been friends with forever, named Dawes. And there was a moment on the tour where there was a day off, I think, and Dawes got an invitation to go into the Canadian. I don't think that the tour. I think that Dawes went into Canada outside of the routing of the tour specifically because a woman had booked, or rather had asked Dawes if they'd be willing to play for her husband who was fatally ill. And we went to their house, and it was a total surprise.
Oh my God.
And there's a song, there's a Dawes song called Something in Common, and it was this guy's favorite song. And like, it was very clear. I mean, like, it was a very somber occasion. It was beautiful and awesome, but like, this man I think he died a week later, basically. Like, he was extremely close. And I just remember watching, I didn't play that show, but I was there to witness it. And I just remember thinking like, oh, like this like matters. This isn't this isn't about like merch anymore. Like this thing that we love is important, and it is important to different people for different reasons, obviously. But in that moment, I just thought, like, I don't know if I've ever done anything more important than just be here to witness this thing. And I try to bring some of that intention to like every show I play, because I want it to be meaningful. And it's not often the case. I mean, I certainly try, but whether it hits every time, I'm not sure. But that first record I made, it kind of fits more in line with that experience. Like, that was a solemn occasion. It meant something. My record, you could kind of say they're related thematically. I don't know what the next one means. I'm still trying to figure it out. The direction of it, like I said before, is like, it's so different that there's a good while longer before the real purpose of it or the motivation of it is it's gonna like tell me what it is.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the pieces inform you more so than you inform the pieces.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't think you go into this if you don't like innately and like really strongly believe in the power of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people that spend their lives doing this, there's just such and I've seen it, it's just such a belief in this thing. And I mean, I share it with you. There's something like greater than human, really, about music. It's
mm-hmm.
not even like a human experience sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like otherworldly in a way that I think is so transcendent. And I think if you don't believe in that, you don't do this. And I think I talk about this all the time, but I don't even know if art's meant to be commodified in the way that it is right now. I truly don't. I think it's that sacred to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really don't know if it's supposed to be commodified in the way that it is.
Yep.
But I think it existing in that form sometimes can make us prioritize things in the art world that are not just the art. And I think there's something really draining about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think reclaiming that focus on nothing more than like what the art means, what it says, and how it makes people feel. There's something really, really, really special about that.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been on tours where like, the name of the game is like you support an art. Maybe like you're opening for someone and mm-hmm. they're huge, and like it just becomes the case. Like, not only do I think that the meaning of the art is being eclipsed by the will to sell sweatshirts or whatever, and I get people have to make money. Like, I guess I'm not even mad at it. But like, the other thing it just seems kind of horrifying. But the other thing that I just know and I'm reminded of all the time is like, I think truly, unless you're doing a full-blown like Roger Waters level thing, music, it reaches a threshold as far as the size of a room before it starts sounding worse. And
that's so interesting.
And it's like certain, like the cool thing to be able to say, right, is like, if you're a band and you played at the Troubadour, and then the next time you come on tour you play at the Palladium, and you keep leveling up, that's a cool desire. I wish if I ever, whatever that looks like for me, I just hope that like it'd be like, okay, I can draw 400 people into a room, so cool. Instead of wanting to go to 1,000-person room, I want to do the 400 room 2 or 3 nights in a row.
That's what you think the level is? Like, do you think that's the threshold around that 400 in terms of like room size?
Like, actually, maybe. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about that. But like, I do think that you get to a certain point of space, a certain point of decibels, and like, I just don't know. I think it's ultimately a diminishing return.
I totally agree.
And the way that I like to see music is, I like it to be a little bit smaller. And granted, like I said, like if you're doing something like full on visual, if the visual thing is like is this fifth Beatle to your band, maybe you do have to do it in a stadium. I don't know, but like I don't want to do it.
I think there's so much truth to that. I mean, let me ask you this: like, I assume we have the same answer, but the shows that live in your brain, right? Not the ones you play, but the ones you've seen. The shows that are etched into your brain, like the most powerful, the most moving ones. What size rooms were they in?
Great question. Yeah, probably 300 max.
That's all of my answers. Like literally all of my top 10. And it's like between, it's between 30 and 400.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bigger than that.
Yeah.
And that's just like, there's something about it, dude. It's like it's. I think when you're in like an 1,000 cap plus sized room, the only character that you're interacting with for the most part is the musician on stage. There's a feeling of they're on such a large platform. I mean, metaphorically, but also physically. Like they're on such a large platform that all we're here to do is direct our attention towards this. When you're at the Smell, there's 100 people in there. You're crammed like sardines. The music's only one aspect of the environment. The rest of the environment being so chaotic and being so like stimulating, because like I said, like you're just jammed. There's so many people, and it's such a different experience. The person next to you is 1% of the people there, not 0.0.0.0.1% of people there.
Yeah.
It feels so incredibly different. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I actually think that's a reason why like residencies and things like that are a very undervalued concept in the modern music industry. I think they should be encouraged more.
Well, this is what I was kind of saying. Like the dream for me would be to I'm down to tour my own stuff, but I would rather it exist as a residency, even if it's for 3 days in a city.
Yeah.
I don't care if the room is 50, like 50 cap, like you get so much from that. You get to like hone in for night 2. Maybe if someone is a big enough fan that they want to come to the second night, it gives other people who maybe had to work the first night a chance to come.
Yeah.
Like, and I love the residency idea. And then on the other side of that, like the most recent like huge thing that I saw was, we being the Lizzie band went to go see Billie Eilish, and like I mean it was certainly impressive, but it felt mainly like a monster truck rally.
Oh, I hate that.
You know what I mean?
That sucks.
And again, like in a way that I was impressed by, and actually she kind of like blew my mind, but like the show was so big that I thought like
it's huge.
Yeah. And I thought like if I had the chance to see her in a small place, like, and it could be like, I mean, in order for that to work for her, she would need to do like a month-long
30 nights.
And like, but yeah, like if that's what it takes, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, damn, that's kind of disappointing to hear, because I love her music so much. I love it. I've never seen it live though.
Oh, I wasn't disappointed.
Oh, okay.
I was more just like, this is so huge.
Yeah.
That it's like
you lose that a bit.
It was just like there was just so much going on but I could tell, like I was like, I honestly had very little context of her going into it, that I left being like, oh, I want to know what it would be like if there was a world where there was a smaller venue.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot there. Like I really do.
Yeah, that'd be so interesting, man. Yeah, that's very interesting to think about. There's really like I think to a degree, when you become just like another face in the crowd, I guess you could say, you lose some of the character of what makes the room special. You lose some of like the individualism, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't like some of my favorite experiences at concerts are like when I've interacted with somebody on stage, or like, you know, they pointed at me, or like maybe I just love attention, but like they've looked at me, or like we've shared a moment, you know, or I've shared a moment with somebody next to me in the crowd. Yeah. That becomes, I think, less common when you have like a group of 10,000 people that are all in the same place. It's just, I don't know. Maybe you would think it's more common, but it's not, I think. Because I think thinking about small shows too, a lot of times the level of fan buy-in can be higher. It can be higher in a lot of ways. Yeah. So I think you have a bit more in common than the person next to you. Yeah. You know, there's like, and you know, there's a million different kinds of Billie Eilish fans. There's probably only like a couple different kinds of fan of the band that has 3,000 monthly listeners that plays downtown every week. Yeah. You know, it's just a very, very different thing. Yeah. I think another thing too with that is like touring, I think you can only do it for so long, and it gets so difficult, I think, at a certain point. I mean, there's guys who do it like like the Rolling Stones, they tour for years and years and years and years. But I would imagine at a certain point that becomes so formulaic that it can get difficult. I think when you have that, either a residency or like, you know, a couple nights at a smaller room, or even just committing yourself to some of these underplays, I think it's not as taxing or as formulaic, which is strange because you might think it would be, but I think it gives each show character in a way that I would imagine. Have you, like, through your years of being on the road, has it become difficult to remain as excited for every new show as you once were? Or do you think you just love it so much that every show is exciting?
I've been really lucky in that, like, basically everything I've ever done hasn't felt like a drag to me. You know?
Yeah.
It's not the case with everyone. I know that sometimes people hit the road because it's a job, and I respect that too. But, yeah, like, I don't know, man. I felt a lot of, I felt a deep sense of meaning and purpose to Dijon, with Lizzie. Like, I really do. Like, I think that we were changing the temperature in those rooms, and that feels really good. I think if you're not, I think it would be really sad.
Yeah.
You know, I think it could be a really brutal way to go.
I think you gotta have something that you're working towards. Like, you have to feel like I think the most excited I've ever felt about being part of anything musically, be that, you know, all different kinds of roles, but like, I think it's the most exciting when you feel like you're at the forefront of something happening, a movement. That to me is invigorating. That's so exciting. Yeah. In any capacity, even a fan capacity, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it feels so cool to be hip to the band that nobody's ever heard of, but they're blowing up and you're there as they're blowing. That's so cool. There is a guy
named Daniel Romano who's a Canadian. Do you know who he is? Okay.
No.
I didn't. I mean, no one does. I met him at a place in Seal Beach like a decade ago, at this place that was called Don the Beachcomber, which is not there anymore. But he was opening up. Or no. I had two friends that were opening up for him. It was kind of like a tiki bar, and I just thought, like, let's go to this thing. I don't know who this other guy is. Like, let's go check out this guy, Daniel Romano. And it was so astonishing to me. He was so amazing that at the end of it, I approached him and was like, you know, hey man, like, I just want to let you know that was incredible. And then he kind of, you know, not in a weird way, but he was like, all right, man, thanks. Like, he was, you know, he was packing up or whatever. And I was like, no, dude, like, you don't understand. Like, I get it. Like, I really do get it. Like, I'm in this. Whatever. I get what you're doing. I'm, like, deeply affected by it. And he was like, okay, like, thank you. And then as the years went on, he went on a huge tear putting out all these records that I really loved. Anyway, he would very occasionally, he's a Canadian. I mean, I've already said that. He's a Canadian who very rarely tours the States. And for the last couple of years, been lucky enough to see him a couple times. And every single time he came, I probably told, like, you know, 80 people per show. Yeah. And, like, on the shit of, like, if you don't come to this, like, delete my number. And then
I have guys like that too.
And then on the last one, it was at Zebulon. One of my friends is in a hardcore band. He was like, we know, what is this? He seems like a country guy. And I was like, dude, just come to this fucking show. Just please trust me. And it was so wild that at the end of it, he was like, I think that was the hardest show I've ever seen in my life. and you could just tell, like, he was immediately bought in, and he was a new convert. And it felt pretty cool. But
it's the beginning of that movement.
Oh yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's fun, dude. It's all fun, whether it's being it or being a fan. It's like, it's pretty fun to be with something that's exciting. What
do you think? I mean, doing this for a while, what was the, I guess, two-part question. What do you think was the biggest turning point for you? And simultaneously, what do you think was the biggest state of frustration you've ever had with music? Because I know you moved to LA to pursue this, and I know how, I mean, I did it too. I know how difficult that can be, and what a leap it can be. What were the low points? Like, how did you kind of get out of them? And what kept you motivated to keep continuing to work as hard as you do, as long as you have, and find the success that you have. Like, what keeps you motivated? What makes it worth it?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I think, I think like, to me, the thing that can be, like, you might not know it at the time, you might not think about it as a growing experience, but like, there's lots of times where, particularly, like, I'm a guitar player, there's a million guitar players in LA.
Yeah.
And it's like, you get offers to do shows, and sometimes they're awful. And sometimes you don't identify with the music that the person's making. And that's fine. Those like, you play a string of those shows, and yeah, if you have a big enough sense of self, you can start to be discouraged. Like, why would I do something that I don't feel passionate about? Ultimately, you can be re-inspired by sort of reminding yourself that it's just like more time in the saddle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I also was lucky. I always had other jobs, which I think, we all have to do because the margins are so thin. But like, I just like, I always was very lucky in that the flow of it all was that I had enough distance, like doing another thing if things got slow, or if I was working on something that I really wasn't working with an artist that I didn't like super believe in or wasn't like electrified by. I could honestly just like get enough charge. This is a funny thing to say, because I have made it my life's work so far to be a music person, but I can't really like, the nature of modern economics is such that like, I could never really look anyone in the eye and be like, dude, just go all in, because like, it's a crazy thing to do.
Yeah.
And so, we all like, I'm really, really lucky that I was able to navigate downtimes with other stuff, whether that was teaching or whether that was working on film sets or whatever. Just like, it's fun to know that you don't have to like die on the cross.
Yes, for sure.
Because it really does, it can get people, and it can really, for people that have way more, back to the idea of self-opinion, I guess you could say ego or something, but like, for people that have way more of that riding on the line, like, if it doesn't work, then it can be really catastrophic for those personalities.
Yeah.
And I just always knew that like, I would be playing guitar forever no matter what. And so, I don't know, like, I could continue to dream about gear or songwriting or whatever without it needing to necessarily be hung on the mantle of like, I have to make it. Like, because it's a crazy thing to think that you're going to make it. It's like, there's just so many factors, and there's so many people trying to do it. But I think having a diversified way of existing in any given week is a really smart thing. Because even when like, I have a budget to make a record or play on a record that's well funded, it's like, being in a studio for 2 weeks in a row, dude,
it's a lot.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It's like a weird way to live.
Yeah. And
I think it's a cool thing to have days off baked into that. I think it's cool to go to the beach or like whatever it is. But I guess to anyone that's like hearing this and is doing it full time, like, deep respect, but just make sure that your mind is like able to have fun and stretch out in different ways outside of this pursuit.
Yeah.
Because it can be kind of a grind.
Yeah, 100%. I think like, there's something to be said about making your passion your job. It can be a slippery slope, I think, and not to say that you shouldn't do it. I think everybody should do it. Yeah. I was like, I literally was like talking about it earlier today. I was thinking about it, talking to my girlfriend about it. I was like, damn, dude, like, my day to day, like, I'm so lucky. Like, this morning I got to interview like one of my favorite rappers, and then I get to like talk to you, who've worked on some of my favorite records ever. I was like, I'm so lucky, and I would never, ever in a million years take that for granted. That's what I get to do as a job. At the same time, though, when your passion becomes your job, and then your fiscal, like your fiscal well-being, and it becomes a thing you love, and it becomes a thing you use to blow off steam, and all your friends are in it, and those friends become family, and your family, it can become everything. It becomes all encompassing. And we can't be unilateral people and like be happy in this life. I think there's more to life than what you do for a job, and there's more to life than your passions. And I think like forgetting that is all too common, especially in Los Angeles. I think a lot of people just music 24/7, 365. I've fallen into that trap, and it gets dark quick. I think having things outside of it are incredibly crucial for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And then there are some people who are like I think I have, I'm like happy with what I'm able to do, but and I'm talking about in terms of my like abilities, like I think I can grow, but there are people that are really touched with a level of like genius or something, where they can only do it, like that's all that they can do. And sometimes I'm like I'm envious of the mental bandwidth of it all. But like then also it's nothing's for free. There's
100%.
Everything comes at a cost.
100%.
And I find that that's often just like I would rather have more friends than more
streams.
Like, truly, like I would just rather be able to like spend time the way that I want to do it instead of having to just grind in a studio. Because I mean, there are some people that are truly made for it, and I'm friends with many of them, and I'm like staggered by how talented they are. But like I said, I think everything has its own little way of balancing itself out.
It's interesting. I think greatness is most people's goal in like a lot of things, but sometimes I don't think we're all meant to be great. I don't mean that in the fact that we can't. I just mean it in the fact that like, dude, to be like one of the best at anything in the world, you probably don't have much outside of that. I was listening to this podcast yesterday with this guy. He's a really cool political mind. And he was talking about like this guy's like very well read, and he's read a lot of like biographies of like presidents, and he was talking about just like how arrogant and insane you kind of got to be to like want to be the president of the United States.
Maniac.
Like he was saying, like he was talking about he was talking about JFK, I think, and he was saying like about like cause he's read like all these biographies about all these presidents, and he was saying how in JFK's biography talks a lot about how like his Sunday mornings, like when he first got in office, were supposed to be about like spending time with his kids, and within like 2 weeks they became like donor breakfasts and donor dinners, and like it's just like there's nothing you do that isn't revolving around your work. And like I get it, being great is probably really cool, but the vast majority of folks that we probably consider great in any field, most of them probably had a lack of balance, which I think definitely could contribute to some bad mental health.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever see the Chicago Bulls documentary called The Last Dance?
Dude, I've wanted to watch it forever, and I keep meaning to, but I haven't seen it. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's like, it's so cool, but it's like an interesting window into what Michael Jordan's psychology was about.
Yeah, it's not good.
And well, I mean, it like got him to where it got him, but like he was like he just clearly like the kind of guy that was like, oh, I missed a shot tonight, like I'm gonna whatever, just sit on this court by myself for like 14 more hours and just do or whether it was 1-on-1, 3-on-3 tournaments with people. Like the second that someone said this to me the other day, not about him, but like talking about like deeply intense people, whether they're like, I don't know if they have to be on like a narcissist spectrum or whatever, but I think it was if around them is that if you're wrong, it's cool. If you're right, you're fucked.
Wait, explain that.
Meaning, like, if you took Michael Jordan to the hole, your next fucking 6 hours or year, he was just going to be like trying to avenge himself against you.
You're fucked.
Yeah, like you're fucked.
I mean,
you did it right. Like you did the right thing.
Yeah, but you're done for.
Yeah, you're screwed.
I mean, the stories of him. I don't remember who it was, but there's the story of damn, I don't remember who's guarding him, but there's the story where he whispered in his ear, I'm gonna cross you left, I'm gonna take you to the high post, I'm gonna hit my spin move, I'm gonna hit a jumper in your face, and that's exactly what he did. Like, he would literally whisper into motherfuckers' ears like what he was going to do before he did it. That's like mind-boggling stuff.
It's wild.
But it's like, respectfully, like, that's probably not a very like healthy person in terms of like how they're feeling on and off the court. Like, that person's probably pretty fucking hard on themselves, man.
They're dealing with a different set of parameters.
So I don't know. Greatness is the goal, but greatness can drive you insane a lot of the times. But I know what you mean in terms of like, there are like, I mean, I think anybody who works in any kind of music for long enough, I'm not say that I've done this very long, but just being in it since I was a kid, like I've definitely seen folks where I'm like, that person's genius. Like, that person is 1000% a genius. But I was just talking about this with somebody. It's like, that person is always either like, you know, sometimes they just, it's very rare to have somebody who's that level of genius and is incredibly well-rounded. Very often that means they've spiraled into obsession with it, or like, you know, they've become deeply narcissistic. There's all kinds of different situations, but it's very hard, I think, to be that level of genius, as, you know, as the greats are, and be a perfectly maintained and well-rounded person.
I mean, there's also something too where, like, as far as if I can use guitar playing as like the metric or whatever, I do love, like, I grew up listening to people absolutely shred, and I don't want to do it, but here's the thing, even if I did, I don't believe that my hands can do it. I think that some people have a more anatomical predisposition to play music a certain kind of way. There's a young woman I know named Mk.gee. She's a cellist. Her hands, to see her hands, she was born to play cello. And like, so I think about myself in these terms of like, Eric Johnson is amazing. Like, other guys like that are incredible. I love it, but I can't really beat myself up about it, because I think, and I don't think that this is a cop-out, like, there's a real strength to recognizing like, oh, I'm probably just not gonna do it. And not because I'm not working hard. It's because I don't think that my left hand is capable of moving at that pace. And, you know, one could argue that is a cop out, but to me it's cool. It's just a recognition to go further, to go more directly into what you're better at anyway. You know? I was just thinking about this actually, and talking about this with somebody. I was thinking about, like, I wonder how much your natural ability and whether or not you lean into your natural ability has to do with like your level of success in your given field, right? Like, for example, if let's say like I was born and I am naturally like a 7 out of 10 at basketball. Like, I'm naturally a pretty damn good at basketball, but I'm like naturally like 4 out of 10 at playing the cello. But like, I go into playing the cello, like maybe my max there is like a 7, but like if I go into basketball, maybe my max is an 11, right, or a 10 or whatever. There's a different like I wonder how many people are great because they selected the right thing, because they leaned heavily enough into the thing they were naturally good at, and they from a young age developed or like figured out what it is that they're that good at. I mean, I think for me, I guess I can think about my own life in those terms, because I have I just knew, like, I was always just gonna play guitar. Like, I just knew it. I don't know why I even knew it, but I did. And I liked sports too. I was decent at those, but like, I do think that for me, it's not so much a matter of proficiency as much as it is like time in the saddle, like I said before. Just that feeling that I knew that I had, that I was gonna be a guitar player. Just even that, like, it felt natural, and so I did more of it. And then, I don't want to say look at me now, but like, it's like I wouldn't have been able to do this without just sort of allowing myself to go where I wanted to go. Like, had the culture of my household been like,
figure out what you're good at,
bro, you're gonna dunk, like, you have to dunk, it would have been game over, dude. You know what I mean? It would have been so fucking ridiculous. But like, I don't know, I'm lucky. No, makes sense. Ryan Richter, that was that was really cool, bro. I appreciate it.
tell me, last thing I wanted to ask you, if there was like one thing that one message you could translate through your playing and through the new stuff you're working on, and just everything you do as a musician, one thing you hope the people imparted from it, like one message, what would that be?
Ooh, damn, dude, that's a wild question.
Big one.
The question and the answer, the thing that's coming to my mind, and I'm not a religious person. I swear, I'm not.
I trust you.
I think the answer that I want people to know, or like the thing that I want people to know, I can't believe I'm going to say this, is that heaven is real and that it's here on earth. Like, I seriously want that to be the thing. Yeah. And there's people that provide that to me through music, and there's one guy in particular, or rather, I don't want to say that it's, I want to say that it's real. I want to say that it's here on earth, but I want to say the other thing about that is that, like, it's all a choice. Yeah. Like, you can be there or not. Yeah. And like, I get that it's easy to not be, but it's just as easy to find something. It doesn't have to be music. There's something on earth for everyone that can get them into that place. Go to it, you know? Yeah. Like, and it's so different for everybody. Like, I don't know, but like, there's a man who's a guitar player. Probably my biggest influence is a guy named Bill Frisell. And I'm nowhere. It's like, we're not even in the same world, but like, I've seen him. There was a time when he and I both lived in Seattle, and I saw him an insane, embarrassing amount of times. And at the end of basically each one, like, I came away with the same feeling, which was like, oh, this is like this level of satisfaction and like contentment is something that's achievable. Yeah. And like, whether I'm in the audience or whether I'm like with a guitar on, like, I want to be reminded of that. And like, if I am in my own playing, then that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah. I mean, that's heaven. Yeah. It's just finding the thing and figuring out every single day, no matter what, like, whether, you know, in whatever capacity, be it a career capacity, be it a passion capacity, be it a hobby, whatever, finding what makes you tick and just doing it. Yeah. It quite literally can be that simple, I think, sometimes. Yeah. Dude, to that point. Thank you, brother.
Congratulations.
Appreciate you.
You've done it.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
That was a really beautiful conversation. Thanks, I really appreciate it. I really love your work. You've worked on some records that have changed me for sure. So
I'm happy to hear it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you and all your work.
Thank you.
Tell them where they could find you, where they could stream the new project. Are you calling it a project or a single or like, what are you calling it?
I think it's a record.
Like, I've been saying record. I think that makes sense, right? Yeah.
It's one song, in case you guys don't already know this, but it's one song. It's 20 minutes, or it's not a song. It's a piece of music that is 20 minutes long. It's just called Number One. My name is Ryan Richter, Richter. Find me at any techno overlords location. I'll be there. Yeah, I'm excited to keep doing it, and I'm excited for the next one because it's gonna be very different.
Hell yeah, man! Yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear it.
Thank you so much.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Dude, likewise.
Music matters.
Hell yeah.